20th century on a global level, where the historical conditions of possibility of the avant-garde are returning. So this has to do with, of course, with the crisis or the different kinds of crisis we are
But
confronted
then
with.
I want to also continue the discussion of so-called avant-garde, or this challenge and transgression of this preceding norm or convention. Okay. Of course, then we have this different modes. One is a manifesto mode of action. The other one is to work with the language to challenge the norm. Even within surrealists, you cannot just take Breton as the single one. You have all different kinds of practices, and they have like René Marquis or other people, like a lot of them. Even Brunier, his film is one excellent mockery of this taken for granted guy. So we have a lot of humor, a lot of clever maneuvering of this practices, and they challenge the norm. So you cannot, but those are also avant-gardists. If we want to give up this military term, then we can say they are experimental, they are this and that. So what is it? They are marching in the front to transgress the previous convention and so on. So this simple, of course, marching slogan and this manifesto and this mobilizing the people and to march forward. Of course, there is no space for further consideration or no impact really on the convention. But in art, we do have this transgressive, again, of course, Blanchot or Dada and so on. So then what do you categorize, or how do you define those artistic experimentation that using or breaking up previous norm, not only in terms of art history, but also in terms of challenging contemporary ideologies and so on. We still have those. Right? And just want to come back to the question, what are the voices we have? What are the forms of language we have?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where you're going, but
yeah.
But that's, of course, that's part of the point. Trying to continue talking about the avant-garde, that I would be reluctant to give up on that term in favor of. In favor of terms like experimental or transgressive or critical, or that's all fine, but I would define that as that's kind of like that's the description of modern art or modernism or something, a broader category, contemporary art, and I think that the avant-garde is characterized by something extra, and that's why the avant-garde is so important to me.
But then how do we could have differentiated in terms of, for example, the marching or manifesto mode from...
But I would actually, that's why it also has to do with, it's not only related to the question of modernism, but it's also related to the question of politics, because what characterizes most avant-gardes is, of course, this relationship to the revolutionary tradition, the revolutionary moment or movement, and that there's a slight difference there between kind of like modernism as a broad movement from, I don't know, Baudelaire to Joyce to Beckett, etc., and then the avant-garde is these different kinds of collectives that actually looked upon and practiced some kind of artistic praxis with a view to some kind of what we, in the lack of a better term, talked about as politics. And so there's a distinction there I somehow would like to keep, and that's also why it's not necessary to talk about the end of the working class movement in the West when talking about Joyce or Beckett or whatever, but that's actually the case when we talk about surrealism or situationist, etc. I think. So there's something there that but and of course the avant-garde is somehow part of modernism, a particular kind of incarnation of kind of the modernist art ideology. So of course they're in a certain sense inseparable. But I think there's a particularity there that's.
Some people
that's
would also
important.
say Beckett and Joyce, they are avant-gardists.
I know. I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't. I mean that's why I think it's important to differentiate. And of course of course you can always problematize abstract distinctions because that's what it is. But I still think it opens for a different kind of discussion. Having this much more strict definition of avant-garde, and as kind of a great refusal or whatever, which also means that this is this bringing together of two different understandings of the notion of revolution.
That was why, for what I was trying to draw, that is a finer distinction or definition of this so-called marching modes of this avant-gardist practice, and the other that's more in-depth confrontation and challenging of the canon or the convention, like Beckett and Joyce did, or other people, other artists, also modern artists. And they, by doing that, they challenge and they actually could transgress and entirely the previous grammatical or compositional canon. Right? So then,
For sure.
so that's revolutionary. Both could be, but the other.
But it's two different ways of. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
right.
two different
So
ways
for
of
that,
thinking
you
the
we
revolution
need
or the revolutionary.
Sure.
And that's what I mean with kind of like the reference in title. That there's a particular understanding of the notion of revolution in what I would define as avant-garde, which is distinct to what you're talking about.
All right.
And of
So
course, it's not not
Sure,
watertight.
Sure. So when students, they are working on Vietnamese modernist literature, or maybe Malaysian or Indonesian or Filipino, maybe this is an important line that we can draw. Okay, when they use this avant-gardist or language modernism, or in art or in literature, for what they are doing, but really they have to challenge. But anyway, I can stop here. Yeah, other comment or questions from students? Alan? Yes. Yes, sure.
It's a very complicated question, but what I would like to say is just this. When you talk about the avant-garde, you don't know what you're talking about. And if I say that like that, you will think that I was crazy. But I think there is a very good reason for saying that. It is that if you talk about avant-garde without having any time in your life thought about yourself as belonging to an avant-garde, to some extent you miss the point. Because you talk about the avant-garde as cultural object, social object, and it's you miss the target. So this is why it's such a complicated issue. It's such a, I would say, fascinating and venomous term. Because it leads us to problems which we cannot solve. This is what Kant called antinomics. Antinomics or antinomics in English? Antinomics? Know that?
Yeah, I think so.
Antinomics, yeah. So it's a problem which you cannot solve in terms of logic or anything, something you fail about. So I'm saying that because I'm probably the only one, the only person who felt about himself like this for many years as belonging to an avant-garde, not artistic, political, maybe for 10 years to 15 years in my life. So I know very well what kind of subjectivity it produces, which has, you draw a lot of benefits from it, and there are as many failures related to it. I would say when I was belonging to that wheel, I wrote the most stupid things I wrote in my whole life. I can document that.
Can you share it with us?
I'm absolutely sure of that. But at the same time, when you are in that kind of state of mind, I belong to an avant-garde, it's incredibly comfortable, more than comfortable, exciting. You are high all the time because you are living in truth. You are living in truth, and the others, it's ideology. So the sharing between science and ideology, it works perfectly. So from that angle, this is why I said it's rather poisonous. The fact that it produces that kind of subjectivity. But if you take the history in art and in politics of the first half of the 20th century, what is left of artistic production, what is left of emancipation, if you suppress what results from activities of avant-garde. Revolutions which succeeded is because they were led by political avant-garde. The Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution. Okay? And the others, which had weak avant-garde, they failed. If we think about our present, okay, we talk about all these movements of the squares, etc. And then, so the temptation is very strong to say, okay, what is missing is an avant-garde. And in the field of art, it's exactly the same. What is left of the art of the first half of the 20th century, if you say, let's forget about the avant-garde, not much. Not much. So we are torn between these two poles, I would say. On the one hand, it's very dangerous. It makes up some sort of not only stupidity. I said, when I was belonging to an avant-garde, I became to some extent stupid on some issues, and very stupid, and dangerously stupid, because I was so self-confident. I knew. So, oh, I don't need to read that. Why should I read that? Because anyway, I live in truth, so no problem. But on the other hand, when we live our present is people by orphans. We are all orphans of the avant-garde, and this is why we are politically so distressed. And you cannot choose between. So this is, I think this is the problem. So maybe one way of saying things would be, okay, let's give up the notion of avant-garde which are self-conscious. I mean, the dangerous avant-gardes are for those who think about themselves as self-conscious. So maybe what could be left is the notion, strange notion, because it's contradictory in the terms, of invisible avant-garde. That is, people who are objectively so but they don't know that they are avant-garde, and they don't think about themselves as such.
No, I don't agree.
No, okay, but it's just an hypothesis. I don't say this is a solution. There is no solution. I know that there is no solution.
No, just a different.
But okay, there are maybe some types of kinds of actions, of statements, books, which are they function as avant-gardists, but they don't have the status of avant-garde, which the status, I mean, related to what the avant-garde of the 20s of last century were. Maybe this would be, but it's just an escaping line. I don't say it's a solution. I say it's just maybe an escaping line.
No,
So,
I do not quite agree with you when you said that when you are not avant-garde as you were, and then we do not understand, because I think for whoever who dare to challenge whatever convention, there is some avant-garde spirit in it, okay? But what action that person would take, it differs. I read a lot. In the 20th and 30th in China, I studied those, okay, in church history and art history, and also in Taiwan. Both the left and the right, in magazines and journals, they use fascist, 法西斯地, they use avant-gardists, 前锋革命, marching, and so on. So all these terms, and also in Taiwan too, okay, all the leftists. But the difference is the style, the mode. When I say act out, acting out, that is whatever I have, I act out, I move. But the literary or artistic maneuvering of the form and to challenge, it's different. Okay, so I studied the history of all these so-called avant-gardists or surrealist modes in Taiwan history, from the Japanese colonial period down to the 90s. Whoever uses the form to challenge, even it could be the martial law period, could be this very in the 80s and 90s, it would be this very commercial and neoliberal, and also at that time it's very nativist trend in Taiwan. They could use their literary mode to challenge. So whoever, for example, and other people, okay, they are not content with this norm that's silencing them. Okay, they just break the grammar, the form, the law, and this is a challenge to break through. This is the same as the action in the street, but they use it through artistic form. Okay, so
I don't agree. Can I object briefly to your
okay,
objection?
sure. I can object with yours and you can object mine.
I think there is a gap between culture, that is all you can learn through reading, studying, and what you know through intuition, which is related to your personal experience. Avant-garde is typically something you can only approach to some extent if you don't have the intuition of it, and the intuition of it, having the intuition of it means having experience. This is the problem. This is not something you can learn in books.
No, you are considering reading two static action. It can be very physical, involved. I mean, in a revolutionary time and so on. But we can stop here. Okay. Yeah.
So what do you say?
No, but I mean.
But have you, no, this is a
Have
question
you
I
been
wanted
in
to
the
ask you. Have you
streets?
already thought about yourself as belonging to an avant-garde to some extent, in some regard?
Of course.
Of course, good.
No, I
Only
think
good.
we leftists are always some sort of avant-gardists, even though we don't admit our
I
stability.
told you that he's a leftist.
Okay.
Would be nice
So
to hear
please
from.
answer the question.
I mean, it would be nice to hear your opinion about this debate that we just witnessed just now.
No, but the first chapter I mean, the first chapter in the book, this the self-murder of the avant-garde. That's an attempt to engage in some kind of working through of the avant-garde, and so part of it is trying to explain what Anna has been talking about, namely that the avant-garde is most of all the production of a particular kind of perspective or a particular kind of subjectivity, and so that also means that it's actually not possible to undertake a kind of objective academic analysis of the avant-garde. That doesn't make any sense. You're either in an avant-garde or you are not part of an avant-garde. And that particular stance, so I'm trying to I mean, both object that production of subjectivity to a critique, but also trying to uphold it, trying to bring it forth, but also trying to argue that it's a necessity, and it's in a way the same today that I'm trying to argue that there's an enormous amount of flaws and dangers in working with the notion of the avant-garde. But I'm afraid that if we let go of the notion of the avant-garde and that particular perspective, which I also think is kind of like I mean, it's the revolutionary perspective. I mean, I think we'll not be able to confront what we've been talking about, for instance, late fascist phenomena, and I think that art is just something we can enjoy in private, and I mean, that's fine. We can do that. We can read books and see exhibitions, but unless it's somehow connected to a revolutionary transgression, it's not. I don't think it's very important.
Could you please show again the picture with the people who have a banner saying death to capitalism? I would like to say something on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, look at this. It's very interesting. So you see their banner, death to capitalism, and they came to the demonstration with their bikes. And I would like to ask you, do you know any bike which owes nothing to capitalism? It exists. I know one. But the kind of bike the Chinese made during the 60s, you know how much it weighs? 30 kilos. You cannot climb. Nothing. I saw them because they sent a lot of them to Albania at the time, Albania. So I saw these bikes in Albania. It's incredible. You try to, you cannot. So it's interesting. Okay, death to capitalism. Okay, but these bikes, light, good bikes, we need them badly.
Sure. Taiwan made.
Of course, this is what I wanted to.
But that's also part of the discussion of the avant-garde, kind of like And that's of course one of the dangerous dimensions of the discussion of the avant-garde, or kind of like the avant-gardist perspective, is of course the militarist connotations, but also this almost the wish for some kind of tabula rasa situation. But I mean that how much has to disappear in the avant-gardist
Yes.
coup,
Yes.
and many of these avant-gardist movements are very radical. I mean they are, the Situationists, for instance, for them, I mean they were Hegelian Marxists, so for them, I mean they were forced to disappear from the art institution. They were forced into kind of like letting go of any notion of militancy almost. For them it was a question of all or nothing, and they were willing to risk almost everything, including themselves as artists, and gave up on art. And of course that particular kind of, I mean that's like the culmination of the avant-gardist subjectivity, and of course that comes with a large price, and that's also one of the things we also have to be aware of or discuss, of course,
Sure.
whether the avant-gardist gestures, I mean, it's radical, and perhaps it's
No,
That's too
and
radical.
still, I think the difference is in the mode we choose to confront and challenge the system. Whether you want to destroy the system entirely, or whether you want to use other different ways to challenge. That is the military. That also is good psychology that will lead you to some place that you cannot hold or cannot stop. But I think when we say the avant-garde spirit to move in the front to challenge the system or the regime, that is, you know who is the enemy. This is not a facade, but the structure, the system, the regime behind it. And in order to change it or to challenge it, it is not a simple action of acting out. Again, this is a very Freudian psychoanalysis differentiation of acting out, or to take a different mode.
no, but
Right.
yeah, no, but that's I mean. I mean, yes and no, because in a way, of course, the avant-garde knew fully well who the enemy was, but the enemy included themselves. I mean, that's both the beauty and the danger of the avant-garde, that they were so radical that they were willing to risk themselves. I mean, that's why that particular text is called the self-murder.
No,
As
I
a
still
suicide of the
think
avant-garde.
the definition, for example, I would say Beckett and Joyce are avant-gardists in some way. Okay.
In some way, but not my way. I mean, I wouldn't call
Yeah,
them
you
out.
have your
I mean,
definition, I will have time.
Yeah.
Or Pasolini, in some way.
Yes. No, and I mean, of course, we can then come with different definitions of what we have to let go, but Pasolini would probably agree that most things would disappear in the revolutionary upheaval, including Pasolini's own films and poetry,
Sure.
because modern art can only come to its potential when poetry and film as we know it disappears. That's kind of like, that's the avant-gardist position.
I think we can stop here. All right, let's thank Mikkel again.